I'd like to call to order the September 13th, 2016 regular meeting of the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors. It's hereby called to order. I'd like for each of us to join me in a moment of silence. You can see on the screen we lost a recent graduate of our Everett Public Schools, First Lieutenant Jeffrey D. Cooper. He was a 2009 graduate of Jackson High School. We learned that he died on Saturday while in service to our country. Jeffrey was killed in a rollover vehicle accident in Kuwait. He was assigned to headquarters in Headquarters Company, 2nd Battalion, the 502nd Infantry Regiment, 2nd Brigade Combat Team in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. He was a decorated soldier, having earned a National Defense Service Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, and the Army Service Ribbon. I ask that you join me in this moment of silence for First Lieutenant Cooper and think of the opportunity to think of his family and loved ones, as well as his service to protect our great country. May his positive legacy be an inspiration for each of us. Thank you. And now will you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Present. Present.
Present.
Present.
And let me be one of many to introduce Druvik Parikh. I know you were introduced to us at the in the spring, but welcome to the board. We're very excited to have you and know that you will contribute fully to the conversations. You can relax this evening and kind of learn your way through. There was a time when Student Representative Carrillo was new, and now she is our senior student representative. So we're excited to have you on the board. Welcome to the board. Yeah. We're now at section 4.0, the adoption of the agenda. Our first item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Cohn, will you please introduce the agenda?
Yes, I will. Consistent with plans established at your 2016 Summer Planning Workshop, tonight's agenda contains several elements related to both the district's strategic plan and the board's annual goals. There is this evening a segment for routine business, a recognition item, a segment for strategic progress reporting, a segment for information items, a segment for upcoming agenda items, and one for board comments. Since publishing the agenda, actually releasing it to you, the following items have been updated. Item 7.8, approval of minimum basic education requirement compliance report, was updated with the grade level summary attachments that we actually can't do until we take the fourth day count. So that item was updated as soon as those were completed. Item 8.1, superintendent's report, will be updated during the meeting as is customary for the regular meetings. Item 10.2, WASDA 2016 legislative assembly priorities, was updated with a PowerPoint presentation adjustment. And item 14.2, regular meeting September 27, was an item was added, the Gertrude Jackson Advisory Board approval by the directors as an upcoming item. We had intended that be on this meeting, but the data from the Gertrude Jackson Advisory Board did not come in by the time we needed to publish your agenda. Those were the only changes to the agenda. The board may elect to change the order of business by a majority vote of the members, and in all other respects, this agenda is as it was published to you, and we ask your approval thereof.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Cohn. Is there a motion for the adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Lassane and seconded by Director Mitchell to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we will proceed to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries. The agenda is adopted. Section 5.0, we have some recognition of new administrative staff that were unable to join us last time, so we're excited to meet these new folks. Dr. Cohn.
And I would ask that Dr. Stewart would come to the lectern and bring with her new administrators for the 2016-17 year. Brian Beckley, who will be serving as the district's new Chief Information Officer. Tina Farias is the new principal for View Ridge Elementary, and Valerie Yob is the new assistant principal for Hawthorne and View Ridge Elementary Schools.
Good evening. I feel fortunate that I get to introduce three really high-quality new administrators to our district. So first of all, I'm going to introduce Brian Beckley. He was former assistant principal at Evergreen Middle School, and he's returning to Everett Public Schools as Chief Information Officer. After being trained, I said, by great teachers at Evergreen, Brian served as a middle school principal at Post Middle School in Arlington School District, and under his leadership, Post Middle School was recognized twice. They received 2 School of Distinction awards in his short time as a principal there. After leaving Post Middle School for the past 6 years, he's been principal at Arlington High School, and again, under his leadership, the school has received 2 School of Distinctions awards. Also, I don't know how much you know about Arlington High School sports teams, but you really don't want to play them. So I remember being at Everett High School last year, and the girls' teams from Arlington arrived, and Scott Jenkins' daughter was playing, and he said, Joyce, we just need to get this game over. So anyway, the Arlington teams they consistently compete in the state tournaments. So most recently, what you need to know about Brian is he finished his superintendent's credential at Western Washington University. So like the other administrators, when I asked him what he was most proud of during his educational career, he responded, I am most proud of the collaborative teams that I have worked alongside of during my educational career. Students always win at all levels when adults collaborate effectively. And again, like we did last time, a word that describes Brian, he said, is collaborator. Even though, and I said to him one word, he said no. He went on. So I found that the theme to be with you, 3 of you. When I asked for one word, I got a phrase. So he says communication is truly the key to success. So Brian, I want to say welcome to Everett.
Thank you very much.
You're coming home again. So do you have any comments you'd like to add?
Well, I would just like to, I'm so excited for the chance to return to Everett. I was always sort of holding out hope that there'd be an opportunity for me to return, as I was in my desk drawer that I've had for my time while I've been an administrator. I still have my Everett Public Schools badge from when I was here a decade ago. Although much younger, I still have my Everett Public Schools ID badge that I wore at all times. So always hopeful in my desk drawer throughout my time in Arlington, the chance to get to return to the district. So excited to be part of the district with these core values that I see just everywhere around, and appreciate the opportunity to serve. So thank you.
Okay, next, Valerie. Valerie Yob is joining Everett Public Schools as the new assistant principal at Hawthorne Elementary and View Ridge Elementary Schools. So prior to coming to Everett, Valerie taught Spanish for ELL and native speakers in Southern California. She was also an elementary principal for 8 years at a bilingual school in Mexico City. And she facilitated the implementation of the school's one-to-one laptop implementation and the expansion of the school to a second campus. So I think, Valerie, you're the perfect person Silly can assign. If you can handle an expansion of a campus, she can handle the facilitation of the new playground at Hawthorne. What do you think? So that should be no problem for you. Since moving back to the United States, Valerie has been teaching Spanish and AP Spanish at Lake Washington High School, and after completing her administrative credential, her goal was to use her experience with diverse populations and return as an administrator to a diverse elementary school. When I asked Valerie what she was most proud of, she says, I am most proud of the connections that I make with students. And then I asked Valerie to tell me a word that describes her, and she says, ultra patient. So anyway, Valerie, I want to welcome you to Everett Public Schools and see if you would like to add a couple comments.
Yes, I'm going to make sure I stand back far enough from this mic. Thank you so much, everyone, for this opportunity. Like I said in my little mini bio, the chance to work with such a diverse population that has needs, that's what I needed to do. I needed to be back where kids really need advocates for them, where someone loves them and supports them and does everything that you possibly can to help them be successful. That's really what I wanted to do, and that's what I have found. Before I started working, I had heard what a good district this was, but it's in this 3.5 week period, it's gone way beyond my expectations. So I am just absolutely overjoyed to be here, and I thank you for this opportunity.
So we're glad we've gone from good to great in 3 weeks. We like that, so thank you. So Tina, join me, please. So Tina Farias is the new principal at View Ridge Elementary School, and she is one of our own adult students, our own adult learners. So prior to signing on to become View Ridge principal, Tina was a 3rd and 5th grade teacher at Penny Creek Elementary School. Then she joined the View Ridge staff, and she was a reading specialist there, and then also she completed her administrative internship there last year. During her internship, she helped redesign the building instructional teams so the teacher leaders would be empowered by using data to inform all of their work at View Ridge Elementary School. Also, Tina should be very proud because during her time as a teacher in Everett, she was part of the work that we had done with the implementation of TPEP, full-day kindergarten, and assessment planning. She is committed to improving teaching and learning and ensuring equitable systems and practices in order to support each student's academic, social, and emotional growth. So when I asked her the question of what she's most proud of, this is her response. Out of all my years teaching, the most memorable and most positive impact I had when I was able to take my work abroad into my own classroom to create cross-cultural relationships and competency. As a 3rd grade teacher at Penny Creek, I took a short leave to help coach teachers in India. I made a strong connection with the 3rd grade teacher and began a collaborative story project. His class wrote one half of the story, and my class wrote the last half. I created published copies to share with all the students, and we became pen pals, writing letters to get to know each other's worlds and lives more intimately. When I moved to a 5th grade position, my former 5th graders were able to continue this bond with the same students in India. We integrated our learning in all aspects of the curriculum, and we built a level of empathy and authentic learning that I'm still proud of today. Last spring, this teacher finally was granted a visa to the United States, and he visited my new family and me at View Ridge. So when I asked her to choose one word, she did okay at first, but then she continued. She said, "I'm an adventurer. I continue my professional development and lifelong learning through my travels. In the past 14 years, I have visited almost 20 countries, and I'm going to have her name those countries for you." So there you go. There's always a little work, so go, Tita. I'm going to let you have the pleasure of doing that because that's a big deal.
I tried to remember them all. I think I got them. Canada, Mexico, obviously, Ireland, England, Scotland, France, Spain, Italy, Sweden, Denmark, Amsterdam, Greece, Turkey, Thailand, India, Hong Kong, and Macau, Taiwan, South Korea, and then I've driven through 28 of the U.S. states. So I definitely like to work hard and also have fun.
So you probably wonder, how does this young person do this? So I want you to know that when I went to her graduation from UW here recently, her mom shared Tina always worked on weekends at the Cheesecake Factory so that she could travel. So I think she sold a lot of cheesecake to be able to visit and pay for 20 trips. But even when school was out last year, she got on the plane and went to Turkey. I know your parents weren't too happy when they heard about the bombing, but I think that really says something. She loves travel, and she found a way to make it work, and I know you're going to do that with our students, too. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Would you like to make a couple comments? Or?
Well, I think I probably shared enough with you, but I have grown here in Everett, starting as a very beginning teacher. I did my first year teaching here, and now I'm doing my first year as a principal here, and so I feel really privileged to be able to grow up in this district and get the support I need to continue my growth and learning. And so here's to the first year of many, hopefully.
Yeah, we'd love to get some pictures with you, and as we get ready for that, you know, we continue just to be impressed with the caliber of administrators. You are joining a great, great, great district, and we're not perfect. There's a lot of work to be done, but we're excited to have you on board and know that you'll make a positive difference in the lives of students. So let's get some pictures.
We have to take the picture to the side. But not that way. It's sort of, so we look skinnier. Yeah. So we're pros at this.
Heavy lift. We trust your leader knowledge.
She knows that. And I'm a Penny Creek parent. Oh, well done. Nice to meet you. That you always help science.
Just want to make the team mad. So just do that.
All right, congratulations. We're now at section 6.0 of the public comments. The school board specifically sets aside 2 times during the regular board meetings to hear from our constituents. We do this because we value public input and want to hear and understand the perspectives the public brings to the table. Dr. Cohn, are there any requests for this first time slot?
There are no requests.
Okay. We're now at section 7.0, the consent agenda. Dr. Cohn, will you please provide an introduction for the consent agenda?
Yes, the board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items. These include meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, and recurring contracts, for example. Sometimes the consent agenda will include items that occur less frequently, but are of a routine business nature. The less frequently occurring consent agenda items are usually reviewed by the board in its Friday report 1 or more weeks before the board meeting, when those items are scheduled to appear on the consent agenda. This gives directors time to ask staff questions about those items or to consider having a broader discussion about the policy implications of any of those items. If consent agenda items are removed by the concurrence of 2 directors, the remaining items are automatically renumbered, and then the board votes once on the remaining items in the consent agenda. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office has received no questions or comments regarding these items. Therefore, the consent agenda is presented as published for board approval.
All right, thank you, Dr. Cohn. A motion to adopt the consent agenda is in order.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
It has been moved by Director Mason and seconded by Director Mitchell to approve the consent agenda. Does any director wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in the new business section of the agenda? Hearing no requests, we will proceed to the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Section 8.0, we have our superintendent's report. Dr. Cohn.
Yes, we do.
We're very excited.
But we're a little concerned.
We're excited. We're ready.
We're excited, we're concerned, we're blank at the moment. So I'm going to
Should we move?
I'm going to suggest that we go ahead and move to the next item.
So we are now at section 9.0, the strategic monitoring report, and I know that we probably need technology for this as well.
We do. But we'll switch back to the lectern monitor, and we'll figure out what's going on with.
Okay, and we also have it on our laptops here, so we can follow
Yes.
along. So the Board of Directors will be providing an update on the progress of the staff professional development efforts, including the work of Professional Development Council and support systems. We've set aside 20 minutes for presentations and 5 minutes for discussion. Dr. Stewart and Debbie Kovacs.
So good evening again. I'm excited to give this presentation with Debbie Kovacs. We've worked in a very collaborative way this last year to strengthen our professional development system. So as I've told you in the past, I like to find a quote that captures the important themes in our presentation. So this is the quote I found this time. Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. So what I want to do is I really want to emphasize the involve me and I learn, and you might ask why. Because the last 2 years with our professional development sessions, we have made sure that we have an emphasis on relevance and on engagement. Because we believe that this is a strategy that is really effective because it ensures that participants, and you can see by looking at the pictures, that when they're working in smaller groups, they have the opportunity to share their thinking, to really gain a better understanding, and that's why we include these pictures. This also is a time for them to get to know one another and also strengthen relationships in our district, because we know we can have really high quality PD, we can have the best instructional materials, but in the end, it's all about those relationships built on mutual respect, and that's how we get kids to deeper learning.
So tonight with this presentation, we'll review the key components of the 2015-16 professional development system, and we'll share with you the 15-16 district professional development priorities, and I'll share with you the challenges and the strengths of our current electronic database, otherwise known as ERO, and we'll share professional development offerings, and we will share about the 2016 Summer Leadership Institute. You'll hear about the 16-17 professional development priorities, and we'll share with you how we are measuring the effectiveness of our professional development. And we'll talk about our monthly substitute calendar, and we will explain next steps, and we'll wrap with sharing with you how engaging in community service can strengthen partnerships. And the importance of the professional learning hits many of the strategic goals as listed here, and you'll see that as we go through this presentation. And the key performance outcomes, I'm not going to read all of them, but they are also listed in the annual operating plan, and you will hear some key components of those as well. In regard to our current database, where we track the majority of our professional development offerings, the two key areas that are strengths are, it's an area where is a central repository for our professional development offerings. And it has become part of what all of our employees know and administrators in regard to signing up for courses that are offered by the district and the administrators who are actually leading in that. We have more challenges, though, and that is that essentially the system itself is not user-friendly, and much of the data that you'll see tonight has been hand-calculated in some ways. We get some of the raw data, but we have to then put it in a format that is understandable to folks. The data, in addition to that, we've had 3 different vendors over less than a 12-month period of time. So last year I shared with you we're waiting for the new vendor to come on board, and we're going to try to roll out or at least get moving on our professional growth plans. That has stalled our opportunities to do that. So we will begin a feasibility study, a review of opportunities that might be better for us in regard to this electronic system.
So this past year, the system was based on a comprehensive needs assessment. What I mean by that is a little over a year ago, we did a survey with all of our work groups, and we asked them, what are your professional development needs? And based on those results, we created our plan. It's also addressed district priorities first on the professional development calendar, then maintenance and additional offerings, and I'm going to share that. All the offerings are vetted through this extensive, comprehensive professional development council that consists of both classified and certificated members. And something we try to do is in almost all of our sessions, we ask for feedback, and we use that feedback to make our future sessions better. Something we're really proud of is that we strengthened classified participation this last year, which is a big deal, and I think it happened because we involved them in a greater way on the council. They had more of a voice in the council, and I know they really appreciate it, especially in the area of technology. And then we also have personalized and expanded our new hires offerings. I'm going to show you that this evening. And I told you earlier with those pictures that it was focused on relevance and engagement, just like with the kids, keeping it relevant, keeping those sessions engaging. And then we're proud because we have many different forms. We have online, I'm going to talk to you tonight about conferences, study groups, face-to-face classes, collaborative meetings, and then mentoring relationships. And we also made sure that this system provides participants different options. So when I talked about, I said that it's broken into two main categories. That one category is the district priorities. So these priorities are based on our strategic plan and our annual operating plan. So if you take a look at that, you can see TPEP, technology, early learning, continuous improvement, building the capacity both of teachers and our administrators, OEL, development of 21st century skills, and then the maintenance. So you might say, what's the maintenance? These are learning sessions that are based on best practices. They become a part of the culture in Everett, but we just can't assume that as we hire new people that they understand what AVID practices are, GLAD practices. So these are practices that we continually do, and we work to go deeper in each of those areas. So this slide is just a glance at our different professional development learning sessions. And if you look at this, you remember that in March was our Learning Improvement Day, and then also August. August is a very big month for us. We have many, many different, numerous and diverse offerings during the month of August. So again, this is just at a glance. So the next two slides support what I shared about our 2015-16 professional development topic priorities. So you will see early learning, OEL, lesson study in elementary and math literacy, teacher and administrative leadership courses, continuous improvement, I'll show you on another slide, TPEP, and technology. In the area of the 21st century skills work, you don't see a lot. You might say, you know, this is a big priority in our district. Where's the PD for the 6 C's? So what we've done is we've slowed that work a little bit by there was a group working on the definitions and the rubrics, and we said, you know what, we need to stop and we need to bring our teachers into this because they haven't been a part of this working group. So this summer we spent a couple sessions with them all day long working at our current definitions and our rubrics to give us input. And then our next step is that we're going to involve students and parents also. So in the end, it's going to be better because we're bringing them alongside, and we know in this district what happens when we do that. So this slide just simply shows the PD sessions that were offered during from June 23rd through the end of August. So the different topics, and again, you can see there's themes here. This might be new to you. So we have a system. It's a subscription. So imagine like colleges and other school districts, we subscribe to Atomic Learning. So it's an online professional development system, and it's used, like I said, throughout the world. And it was founded by teachers. It's available 24/7 so that actually students and parents, anyone who has a login, they're invited to log in and take any of the classes, and these classes are kept updated. So if you look right now, for example, online, there's a lot of classes about specifically the impact of specific teaching and learning practices. There's college and career readiness classes, there's student safety awareness, there's technology use, a lot of classes for our special ed teachers. But what's really great about this system, we can also customize our own professional development and upload it. And so if a teacher missed a training, he or she is able to log in, and if we videotaped it or if we uploaded, which we're just starting to do, they can take that training there. So again, this has a lot of capacity in our district, but it's a great resource for students, parents, and our other employees. So I just wanted to, I had said earlier that continuous improvement was a focus last year, and I almost got post-traumatic stress when I looked at this, because I remember this last year. Peter, you probably do too. We started practically the first day of school. We were out at our schools all the way through December, and really going through our continuous improvement framework with all of the teacher groups. So we spent significant time out there, but it was well worth it, and I'm glad that we were able to do that. This is the one I told you about that we're really proud of. Last year, what we did for the first time is right away, shortly after school started, we sent a survey out to our new hires. And instead of us deciding what we think they need, we asked them what they need. And after surveying them, you can see to the left there, those are the topics that came back with high ratings. So we offered those topics to our new hires throughout the school year. So we called it a menu of offerings specifically to our new hires. And we're really fortunate. You don't get to see them enough, but we have two outstanding facilitators in this district, Lorraine Marks and Lois Craig, and they work full-time with our teachers. If you were at the new hire training, you saw them with Sally. They facilitated those 4 days, and they are absolutely amazing. I included this because this is something else that you don't see. Somebody might call me sick or something, but I so look forward to Sunday nights, because by Sunday nights, all of our principals have emailed us their newsletters. These newsletters are what I think probably the most powerful form of professional development that we have real time in the school district, because they include what's coming up, they include birthdays, they include, congratulations, but all of our principals include some piece of PD, and it's just amazing to see how integrated and aligned. And then many of them include pictures of students working or teachers working together. So, imagine Sunday night going through 9, 10, or 11 of these. I mean, it's kind of an emotional experience to see how, starting at the strategic, with the strategic plan, annual operating plan, all the PD that we're doing, that it's alive in our schools. And Gary probably doesn't like it, but many Sunday nights I send him many of these, and I say, oh, here's a tearjerker for you. So anyway, but this is powerful. It really is. And that's become a part of our culture in our school district. I wanted to include this because, like I've said in the past, faces really tell the story. These are faces of our administrators engaged in our Summer Leadership Institute. And again, the emphasis was relevancy and engagement, really giving the new leaders opportunity to get to know each other and also develop stronger relationships. So I wanted to show you just some of the topics of our Summer Institute. This is a really rich 5 days together. So this year the theme was Leaders Partnering for Deeper Learning. And so what we wanted to do is really focus, first of all, on creating stronger relationships within our own departments, but then also inviting some of our key business leaders and community leaders in and learning from them. And there were very high ratings after this session. So we hope to just continue those relationships. I know a lot of the schools have already invited some of the leaders in to be a part of some of their professional development in their building. The second day, again, all around building stronger relationships, we invited the teachers from the Bellevue School District, elementary and secondary teachers, to teach us about what have they done in their school district now. They're about 4 years ahead of us as far as implementation of one-to-one and technology integration, and how they have specifically used it to increase student engagement. I have to say, if you could have been at this teacher's lid day, they took what they learned from these educators and they are implementing and applying it to their work, and I saw it pretty much in all the lid presentations that I was able to see. And then there's just the constant work about not assuming that all of us know how to work together. That's, we always talk about collaborative teams, building high-performing teams. So every year we spend a little bit of time, but especially this summer we spend time because we've hired all the new assistant principals. And so you're going to see in this session, we learned about how do we develop stronger systems during our lift time, but then also we brought someone in to really help our administrators talk about what does it look like to work as a team, as far as creating systems and structures in their buildings so that they are performing at a high level. And then you'll see August 4th we had Heidi here, and again this was based on input that we really need to start embedding equity in all of our meetings and all of our training. So Heidi launched the work here. She also was at the new teachers. She worked with our new teachers. I know she worked with our school board. She was also at some of our schools. I see on October 14th, Cascade High School. I believe she's going to be working with Cascade High School. But here's an example of a person who came, and people left really moved after being with Heidi. They saw hope. They were excited. And it's an example of when in a school district, just like with TPEP, when you find a really quality person to come in and teach us about common language, and then how that excitement can spread to the school. So I have to really say congratulations to Heidi. She has done that. And I talked to you about Spencer Welsh. We had him in to help with our administrators. The day ended in a really powerful way, though. We invited our neighborhood groups for the north and central areas to come in and have lunch with us. So the principals were there. You can see, for example, Celia at the bottom. We did an asset mapping activity with them, and we're going to continue those relationships. So, for example, last night I was at one of the neighborhood groups. Kelly Shepard was there. Felicia Green had reported out with the rep who's working closely with Jackson Elementary. So after the meeting last night, Kelly and I were really reflected on how we can build a stronger relationships. There's some good work that's going to come out of this. It's going to take us some time, but I would say in 2 years we're going to be there. And then here's just an example of one of the feedback sheets really based on engagement and relevance. Here's feedback from the Summer Institute. And again, before we even plan these sessions, we meet with the presenters and say, you know, at the end, they're going to be rating you on relevance and engagement. And if you take a look from a scale 1 to 5, those are some high ratings, and even if you compare them just to last year. And same in the area of engagement. So this year, based again on the strategic plan, annual operating plan, our focus for this year is going to be technology. TPEP will move to maintenance. However, we have a plan that we're bringing all of our new hires in for training again. Building deeper partnerships, continuing that work on 21st century definitions in the rubric, the equity work that you saw us launch this summer. And then, as you know, studying the new elementary instructional materials, and then social emotional learning, which you will definitely hear a lot about this year. So how do we measure the effectiveness of professional development? We can have all this, but how do we know if it's effective? So like I had said, always including feedback, because if you don't, how are you going to get better? So we try to do that in all of our sessions. Really, it's about improved teacher practice, and that having evidence that this supports that students that there's student growth happening, that they are learning, that they are achieving at high levels. And then just those formal, but also those informal classroom observations. We've said to our principals, now you have assistants, we have an expectation that you are in your classrooms more often. In fact, we've developed apps for all of their phones. And then just observation of student work, you know, really results of formative and summative assessments over time, not just 1 year, but over time taking a look. Has this professional development had any impact? And then there's various artifacts, simply asking kids when you're visiting classrooms, and again, like I said, both small-scale and large-scale assessments over time. So Debbie's going to come up here in a second, but before she does, I put October in here because this is about capacity and balance. So this is the sub-calendar for our professional development calendar just during the day for October. And we try not to pull out more than 30 teachers per day, and then we leave 20 in case schools want to have professional development in their buildings. So that can be, you can see, if we're doing our priorities, TPEP, now we have technology integration happening with the 5 different schools, and then just continuing the work, the DRA testing. So it doesn't take much. So there's always this balance, and we have to plan because, remember, we hired the teachers to be in the classroom with the kids. So we really don't want more than 50 teachers out per day. So Debbie's going to expand a little bit more on this. The calendar and subs, you want to talk a little bit more about that part?
So this is just a snapshot of 1 month, and we do work real closely with teaching and learning. It pushes against our ability, as you know, with the sub shortage, to fill those vacancies. So that's why we try to minimize the number that can be out any one day, because sick leave is something that we can't anticipate, and personal leave is something that we have some control over, but it's building base, so that can have an impact as well. We like to have about 400 in our sub pool. We have about 350 because we hire 25 each year, and then another 25 goes to another district. So in addition to our teacher shortage, we're still continuing to look at ways in which to get people here. So any great ideas, please bring them our way. So the next steps will be to conduct a comprehensive needs assessment and implement the instructional technology training at 5 schools, monitor our substitute capacity and to support the work, research the electronic data system, and then use feedback to strengthen our offerings. So this, we're going to be a little bit over, but I'm going to share with you a video that I think it just wraps it so nicely. And it captures the breadth of the continuous improvement process and shows how community service strengthens our partnerships by helping us understand the various needs of our community. So, see if I can do this. I minimize this.
So while she's bringing that up, what you're going to see is 2 evenings in August, the administrative team, we do community service throughout our community. So in addition to doing community service, it's a time where we get to learn about our community. I think you can just, oh, yeah, there you go, just push it.
It's right here?
Next one, Brett. I'm going to need you to close your eyes, and I need you to empty your mind. Whoa, that was quick. So I'm sure you're wanting now to get into the schools.
Into the schools? We're going to watch this Harvard meeting. So into the schools. Into the schools. Into the schools. So that the success and happily ever after.
One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I believe it's not too late. Together we can change the world. Lay the puzzle pieces out. Find out what it's all about. Together change the world. Can't do it by myself, so I'm asking for your help. Together we can change the world. Sail past where it's been charted, roll your sleeves up, let's get started. Together we can change the world. Together we can change the world. With our hands and with our hearts, we can dare to make a start. Together we can change the world. What if we spoke with one voice, knowing that we have a choice? Together we can change the world. Can't do it by myself, so I'm asking for your help. Together we can change the world. Sail past where it's been charted, roll your sleeves up, let's get started. Together we can change the world. Together we can change the world. Change your mind and change your life. Set aside the fear and strife. Together we can change the world. When we open up our eyes and we start to realize, together we can change the world. Change your mind. Can't do it by myself. Asking for your change the world. Together we can change the world. Change your mind. Sail past where it's been charted, roll your sleeves up, let's get started. Together we can change the world. Change your mind. Can't do it by myself. Asking for your change the world. Together we can change the world. Change your mind. Sail past where it's been charted, roll your sleeves up, let's get started. Together we can change the world. Together we can change the world. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I believe it's not too late. Together we can change the world.
So now I'm trying to get to the summary, but we'll just go right to it. It must be a little, there we go. So we shared the progress of the professional development system, and we highlighted the professional development offerings, shared the strengths and weaknesses of the ERO system, and we communicated about our Summer Leadership Institute. We shared with you our plans for 16-17 and the focus on professional development, and we showed how the community service strengthens our partnerships. Additionally, we shared next steps. With that, I open it up for questions.
All right, thank you. Directors, are there any questions or student representatives for Debbie or Joyce?
I'd just like to say thank you for inviting me to some of the Leadership Institute sessions this past summer, and I really enjoyed them. I thought they were very delightful and engaging. So a lot of truth came out of it, and we understood ourselves and how we fit in the big picture in some categories. And I think that's the important part, knowing and understanding how you fit into the part and what you're learning. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you for sharing and being a part of it. It was fun to see that lots of learning took place, but a lot of play and a lot of relationship building makes a difference in how we all work together. So
I just want to thank you for the information on slide 26. I think something we've asked is, how the effectiveness of the professional development, that we provide so many hours, and how we know we're getting our bang for our buck, and the fact that you have demonstrated that you're continuously looking at this and continuously trying to improve it, and the way you did feedback differently this year, I just want to thank you for that, because I think this really helps us understand when we plan the budget and support this, so thank you.
I did have a question on one of the slides on 28, the first two bullets, the conduct comprehensive needs assessment and then implement the instructional technology training at 5 schools. Can you just elaborate a little bit on those two, what those are?
So we conducted a survey, like I said, it was a little over a year ago for all the work groups, and so then we implemented the plan based on that. So as we're starting our new work, and we're actually looking out to next year in October, because our lid day has been moved from March to October, so we're going to conduct another survey here in a couple of weeks and ask all of our work groups about their needs. And based on that, what we do is we build classes and different sessions based on that survey. We have already what we need from the annual operating plan. Then we take teachers' input and we build out the winter and summer, and then that will inform next October for the Learning Improvement Day.
Yeah.
The next one, implementing instructional technology training at 5 schools. So as you know, all of our secondary teachers received their devices at their Learning Improvement Days in August, and then the elementary teachers are getting theirs in October. So now it's time to have the teachers. The plan was that we'd bring 2 schools in, so Everett High School and Sequoia teachers, starting I think it's the first or second week in October, for 4 days, they're going to go through training with Jeff Utek on really how to use these devices, similar to what you saw from the Bellevue School District, on really engaging our kids at a deeper level. So really access, thinking of access. So we have those 2 high schools, and again, it's based on after they're finished, they're going to go through 4 days of training this year, and then the students will get their devices next school year. And then in addition, we have 3 elementary schools based on if we felt these schools where there was a hunger, a readiness, they're also going to be going through training alongside the secondary schools, Sequoia and Everett, different days. But all that starts here in October. And then the goal is to get them more Chromebooks next year, those same schools.
Is the training different for the secondary level versus elementary school because of just the types of activities and that kind of stuff?
Right, it is different, and another reason we set it up that way is because we are inviting teachers according to their area. So for example, one day we have the math and science teachers coming, so we want the teachers from the different schools working together and forming those collaborative teams and networking and helping each other. So the days are set up when they come according to their content areas, and so we wanted to stay true to that.
Other questions?
I actually have a question. It was on slide 26 on the how to measure the effectiveness of the professional development, and what stuck out to me was formative and summative assessments. And I wanted to sort of know what you expect to change, or what you're expecting to see in the formative and summative assessments over time.
Okay, so let's take, for example, just because this was recent, we had all of our teachers go through springboard training. So that all of our secondary, just because you're a high school student, they went through many, many sessions for 2 years related to springboard, which is really focused on literacy, so reading and writing. So one of the strategies I know they use in there is close reading, because that's connected to Common Core. So they had a lot of training on how to do that effectively with students. So now when we visit classrooms, when students have texts out, we should see notes, we should see highlighting, we should see them rereading their text. That was all modeled for them. And then also in writing, for example, something that was modeled over and over is that before your teacher gives you feedback, you should have the opportunity to share with 2 or 3 other peers, and they give you feedback first, and then you take that feedback, reflect on it, and strengthen your writing sample, and then you give it to your teacher. So those are just 2 examples of practices that we should see when we're visiting classrooms. So in the end, it's whether you're succeeding or not and being successful. It's about learning results. But again, not just one time, one glance, but over time, how are kids improving?
Other questions for Debbie or Joyce? I had a couple. On slide 6, you talked about 3 vendors for the electronic register online, and I can't imagine that these are cheap.
No.
I'm just curious,
So there
the
is,
cost associated with these and,
there's a startup cost,
Yes.
right? And then you have a maintenance cost. So we're now in maintenance, if you can call it that, with our ERO system, which is about $10,000. So we're
per
looking
system?
for, just to maintain the
Okay.
license and any enhancements that they provide for you as part of their service and the help and all that jazz. We're looking at a system that for startup costs would be about $35,000. That's one, just to start up, and then the maintenance fees would then go down
Right.
to some extent.
So, because I recognize that there's a burn-in phase with any module that's introduced to staff, and a lot of times, you know, it could take 6 to 9 months to get through some of the initial pain points. I'm just wondering why we went through 3 systems in less than a year.
The vendor, we stayed with ERO,
Okay,
but we had 3 different companies buy out each time, so.
okay, okay.
And with each buyout, we have different services, or shall I say lack of services, in
Yes.
supporting our needs. And we just can't make any progress.
Yeah, okay.
It's not unusual to have, you know, in technology, you have that turnover at times, but 3 in a year is pretty significant.
That's pretty brutal, absolutely. And then I was trying to get an understanding of, when we look at professional development, is it, and my assumption is the answer is it's a blend between the two. Do we look at kind of individual professional development pathways for teachers, but then we also look at district priorities? And are teachers able to help carve their path, or how does that work? I'm trying to get a sense of what percentage of teachers are taking what, or is there a per amount per teacher that's allocated for professional development?
Well, Joyce probably can answer some of that. The district, there are 2. I would say that we're working toward trying to have a professional growth plan module where teachers can intentionally outline what it is they personally want to do in order to
Yes.
grow. That
Okay.
also aligns with the district initiatives and the professional development offerings district-wide.
Okay.
So there is those 2 paths.
So like I talked about those 2 areas, so based on district, mostly the annual operating plan, what are our district priorities, what do we have for maintenance? But then also, so by October 15th, all of our teachers meet with their principals by October 15th. They determine what evaluation system they're going to be on for this next school year, and they also determine what professional development needs they need for the school year. And so that's why we do this survey, but with the survey we try to pick out big themes like we did with technology. But at the same time, that's why I do like this atomic learning, so that if it's 9 o'clock at night and I want to learn something and I know I need to focus on it, I can access that online system too. But we always have to provide training when we have new adoptions. So like right now, if you were here today, you would have seen the social studies teachers who did not attend the training in the summer. They were here now. So there's a lot of training it's based on what adoptions we have. But in addition, just the maintenance professional learning opportunities are pretty comprehensive, they are. And then that balance again of when can you do this, because you don't want to pull too many subs out, too many teachers out.
There are opportunities for our staff to take training outside of the district, and we have to do workarounds with our system to load that data in, but we have worked with that as well. But for sure, Everett has a robust clock hour offering that I would say not one district could match probably the offerings that we have that I think serve both personal growth options and the district initiatives.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you. It's something that I know the board was interested in hearing about, so thank you for a great report. We are now at the information discussion portion of the agenda, section 10.01. We want to spend a little bit of time around the state of the school review assignments. This item provides an opportunity for directors to peruse the schedule of reviews, check assignments against calendars, and confirm director attendance. Dr. Cohn, it looks like you have some handouts or information for us.
I believe we've been able to capture all of your submissions, so I'm going to go ahead and walk through what you've turned into us. At this point, we only have one school. It appears we only have one school that's not covered, although there could be errors in this information. So I'm going to go ahead and read through these. And then there's a spot or two where 3 of you have submitted your names. So what I hope to do is be able to reconcile this within the next couple of minutes. So I'm just going to start at the top and go down the bottom. And you check me. I'm going to call out who's assigned to each school based on your submissions. So Emerson is Ted and Pam. Honey Creek is Tracy and Carol. Carol. Tracy and Carol. Cascade is Ted and Pam. Eisenhower, Pam. Pam only. Eisenhower. Yeah. Jackson, Tracy, and Caroline. Carol's identified as, she's tentative, so that puts her in a place, one of you, if you can't come, who's committed, right? Carol? Okay, good. Woodside, Tracy? Sequoia, Ted and Tracy? North, Ted and Tracy? Did? Okay, so which one?
Carol, if Carol would like Sequoia, you can take my name off.
M comes off. A goes on. Good. Okay. Wait a minute. That you Sequoia or North?
Sequoia.
Sorry. North then is also Ted and Tracy. Lowell, Pam and Tracy. Heatherwood, Tracy and Carol. Madison, Caroline, Carol. Gateway, Tracy. Cedarwood, Tracy, Carol. Hawthorne, Ted, Carol, Tracy. Somebody's got to bail.
I'll bail.
Okay?
I signed up for a lot, just
Yeah,
to figure out to back
yeah.
down.
Whittier, Ted, Tracy, Carol.
I'll back down.
Okay? Everett High, Ted, Caroline. Forest View, Tracy.
I'd like to go to that one as well.
What? You want to go to Forest View, Pam?
Yes, please.
Okay, Forest View would be Tracy and Pam then. Monroe, I've got 3. It looks like Tracy, Pam, and Caroline. Okay, Pam and Tracy, one of you want to forego? Tracy,
I
right?
can forgo.
Okay.
Likes Monroe.
Okay.
I like Monroe too, but
Actually,
Caroline hasn't been.
Pam's
I've
not-
never been.
That's
I
okay.
would really like to go.
Pam's got this, what, 4-year history there now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not getting away with anything, I'm
Yeah.
telling you right now. Pam's got notes from all 3 previous
she
years.
does.
Yeah, I just sit back and listen. Evergreen, Caroline and Carol. Mill Creek, Tracy. Silver Fir's unaccounted for at this point. Okay?
Right now, not available on my notes, so.
Okay, Silver Fir's Tracy.
I've never been there as well. I need to double check my calendar first before committing.
I'll put your name down with a question mark. Blue Ridge, Caroline and Pam. Silver Lake. Did I say it was Silver Firs that was missing, or did I say?
Yeah.
I
Yes.
did. I said it correctly, did I?
Yeah.
Silver Lake, Tracy and Pam. Jackson Elementary, Pam. and Caroline. Garfield Elementary, Ted only. Jefferson, Carol Andrews only.
Say again?
Jefferson, Carol Andrews only.
Caroline only?
Carol Andrews.
Carol Andrews only.
Oh.
At Jefferson.
Okay.
And I got Tracy signed up for one of the makeups. And I got the first makeup, and I got Tracy signed up for the third makeup just in case we need to bump something. Okay? We're good. Now, the other thing I'd like to, this is essentially an element of engagement. What I'd like you very much to do is open your email. I sent you an email a little while before the board meeting. We have a list for you of engagement ideas, concepts, practices that we've engaged in. And we've got a link to a survey. And I'd like you to take a look at the list with me. I'm not sure with me. I better open it if I'm going to say with me. I'd like to see if there are any items that you're desperate to have added to the list. And Leanna can do that before you start taking the assessment. Well, the survey, it's not an assessment. Survey. What I'm going to ask you to do is rate on a scale of 1 to 5 each of those engagement opportunities. And at the end of the meeting, we'll share with you, when we get to board comments, which of the things you think are the most valuable.
So we just go to Survey Monkey now, and then or do we rate these?
Don't rate them yet.
Oh, don't rate them
Look
yet.
at the list first.
Okay.
And the list is in the email without ratings. And see whether or not there are any things that we would need to add very quickly before we have you start rating. You have to come up a little closer to be able to hear.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are a couple things I'm noticing. I have questions and some things to
Sure.
add, maybe.
Sure.
First of all, school visits. That is a very broad category. I'm not exactly sure what that means or what that encompasses.
Does that include cultural events?
That's a specifically arranged school visit based on your liaison assignment to meet with the principal and walk through the school.
And are you asking us if we want you to do that for us? Because I usually take care of that myself. If I have time and I can go to a school, I'll contact the principal.
I'm asking whether or not this particular item is one you want to make sure is in your list of things to do for your engagement activities this year. Whether I arrange them or whether you handle them yourself.
Okay.
We can talk about that.
And then,
Which would be different from, for example, when we talked about today, but didn't put on the list, principal coffees. And we talked a little bit about organizing specifically some principal coffees and having you go to those, whether they're your liaison schools or not. So
Talk about maybe that we could shadow some of your leadership team's visits, like you guys are popping in and out, or there might be some staff
we
conflict
did not
there.
talk about that, and we would need to talk about that at great length before we would put that on the list.
okay, so why do you have specifically call out the 2 holidays versus?
Because there are huge events. There are huge assemblies that we could schedule you for to be introduced.
So what about like cultural nights? I mean, is that, does that just fall under?
Cultural nights is another possibility. We could schedule you for some of those if you want to be at those. They don't occur on a specific day, but they're a thing that you could add to the list if it's important to you, if you'd like it added. Because the different schools do different things, and we just collect the list and figure out how to assign them to you somehow. I don't know what it is. The question is whether you want us to do that.
What about sports events? So we're not including sports events.
You know, sports events, we have this monstrous list of sports events, and our ability to assign you and to have you actually do anything is not, they're not conducive to your, to engagement.
Yeah.
It's like school plays and concerts. There are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of those, and there's very little opportunity. And frankly, the feedback that we got this summer is that you don't want to do those as a part of your engagement activities. If you want to go to them, you go to them. But as a part of your engagement schedule, you didn't want us to mess with that, so we didn't put it on the list. Yeah. So we're looking specifically for things where there's some staff investment in these activities.
Okay.
So if school visits are something we structure as an engagement, we'll calendar that, we'll set it up, and we'll do some work on it. The notion is a little bit different from a coffee. This is going to be longer than a 5-minute item. Sorry about that.
For the city council meetings, how are we?
We did one this last year. The question is whether or not you want to do a couple more this year. There was some conversation about going to Everett, and part of the question is whether we want to go back to Mill Creek.
I think that's important.
I mean, that was a substantive investment of time and energy on a number of your parts and staff.
And family conversations are?
The things that we did with African American families, Native American families that we did not include you in this go around, and we think that the way we could structure them this coming year, we could wrap some of you into those. Not 3 of you, or 4 of you, or 5 of you, but some of you into those.
One thing that I would like to add potentially, if other legislative meetings, when we have legislators.
You don't need anybody's agreement to add. They'll vote whether they like it or not.
Oh, okay.
So at legislative meetings.
I mean, is that considered like community, or do we just already do that, or?
It's sometimes included some of you in those. They haven't been really popular with you all. So the way we've done them in the past hasn't worked very well. So we switched to a different mechanism this last year. In some cases, you were able to make it. In some cases, you were not. But we didn't make a big deal of it because of the number of meetings. But let's add that to the list.
What about Rotary?
Community presentations?
Community presentations, is that on there?
No. No, it's not
Community
separately.
events, what is that versus?
I think it encompasses presentations and events in the community that are scheduled, so it's pretty broad.
I can't hear, I'm sorry.
She says it encompasses Rotary and things of that nature pretty broad. Probably we'd want to put something on it that says service club presentations.
Will the student summits be like the technology summit that we have, the ones that we schedule and we say or are they different than that?
Like that. We had a specific request for a gathering for Native American kids, and we had we thought considerably about bringing kids back together for another tech activity. The general notion is, do you want to roll in those as an engagement activity?
Don't have the expo or innovation day.
No, you asked us to take those off of the calendar and put them on a list, and two of you could sign up for it.
We're already
We handled that this summer.
We're covered.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm wondering if it might be in our best interest of time tonight because I think we have more questions around this list than we can actually get to. And I know that there's a desire to see this tabulated tonight, but maybe to give directors time to think and reflect over the questions that we have, maybe the survey gets filled out by Friday, because I think it's important that we kind of narrow down what are some of the choices that we have to choose from. Would that be okay?
It's up to you. It's your engagement plan.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing time sensitive to this other than we said that we wanted to ensure that we had the opportunity to look at an engagement plan. Dr. Cohn has provided a list of some. I think we've added a lot of good ones as well. I think it's worth our time to continue to explore those and then fill out the survey.
Is the survey identified as that I filled out the survey? So that, because
It's a Survey Monkey.
It's a Survey Monkey, so
Survey Monkeys, you identify yourself.
this one doesn't have your name on it.
That's one question.
Okay.
It just goes by IP address, so it does not.
Okay, so it's summarizing how all 5 of us rate
Yes.
what our top priorities would be.
Yes. Okay.
And then we would go through and decide what are the events and who would go to what
Yes,
thing.
there's multiple steps to this. That's correct.
Okay, then I would like until Friday to reflect.
And I want to make sure you didn't hear my answer to say we're going to do all the multiple steps tonight.
No.
We're not. We're just trying to get a sense of which ones of these are most important to you.
And that's what I would like time to reflect.
Okay.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I know you're primed and ready to like pull up the results.
Are there other ones that we want to add?
Or we had talked about I had mentioned at one point the mayor's presentation to the seniors. Talking levy, they kind of liked having us there, and that was kind of. What are you referring to? When we went to the senior center in Everett, and you know they got to learn what school looks like today, and they really liked having us there. But again, I don't know their engagement in our schools, or if that helped engage them in our schools.
Other thoughts for Dr. Cohn? Actually, I like how this is building out. I think it forces us to not only look inward but outward. And it's a different way of approaching it, but I think it could be really healthy. So.
And I just, one more clarification. Sorry, the difference between family conversations and fish bowls?
Yeah, family conversations is where we bring families of an ethnic group together. And we
So it's
structure.
going to be ethnic? It's
Yes.
going to be a specific, okay, can we add
That's our-
that then?
that's
So
our
we
plan.
know that when can it say ethnic family conversations or
Diverse family
diverse?
conversations.
Sure.
Something that
Sure.
identifies it as
Sure.
specifically.
You bet.
That's good.
And we don't really engage during a thought exchange, so would that be, the district engages, but we don't? So,
we have to be there. We're usually
no, the
there.
thought exchange,
No, the
isn't
thought
that's an
exchange.
email survey
That's
thing,
an
isn't
email
it? Where
survey.
people star
That's the
things?
council.
But that's done on your behalf, essentially, and you review the results
Yeah, but
together.
Okay,
So it's an electronic remote engagement activity
okay.
that is, if you don't think is valuable, we won't do it this year because it costs money. It's like telephone town hall meeting. If you really don't want to do it, we're not going to pay the money to engage in that. It takes a lot of staff time.
It's absolutely,
So this
absolutely.
is about where you want to put staff time in your time.
Right.
As we try to reduce meeting length and try to reduce meeting numbers to some degree, we don't want to just backfill with a bunch of engagement events that you're not happy about. That doesn't go well for me at the end of the year.
Well, it's about strategic use of time.
I thought it was about whether you were happy with me at the end of the year.
Well,
That always
you know,
matters.
on the thought exchange thing, that's a tough one because, you know, the information was interesting, but it wasn't particularly telling because it was so broad, I thought. And yet, it's my understanding that you sort of gain momentum with these online surveys. And so I kind of don't want that online survey to go away where people can provide input that they need. And I would be open, I guess, to other ideas. But I would be curious whether the thoughts on the thought exchange, whether it would be a valuable thing to continue doing that. Our district has done it a couple times and people are sort of understand what it is now.
And if we, sorry.
Finished. I think she's waiting for an answer that I don't have for her. I think the question is whether or not you found it valuable. If you don't find it valuable, we probably shouldn't spend the money on it. If we think that we need it, we'll tell you that.
I guess my answer to that, I understand what you're saying, Caroline. My thought would be that whatever survey process we use to gather feedback, it creates an expectation for the community that that's the way we're going out to the community. In some ways makes it easier for people to participate. So I think when the Thought Exchange first rolled out, you know, some people were more thinking, well, what is this? And once they got used to it, it became easy, and you're right, it built a head of steam, and people are able to do it. So I would say, if we see ourselves wanting to solicit feedback again, that I would tend to go towards a vehicle that we've used previously as opposed to creating a new one, just because I think there's an ease of use that makes it easier and more efficient to get feedback.
Usually, when you change your vehicle or your method of receiving input, you tend to you lose people, or you get information that you can't equate it with something you previously had. And I think you're the same way with Thought Exchange. It is a vehicle to get some information from the public. And whatever we can do to continue to open the doors for the public to share what they think is good for us.
I agree with both of you. I just felt like it was also very cumbersome. Stars, and you only had so many stars, and maybe people are more, was not as intuitive as just a survey, I thought should be.
Which doesn't preclude you from, and we plan to do another survey, a statistical sample. That's not an engagement activity for the board, though.
Right.
If we were to go out for an 18 or later bond, when would discussions like that start happening, and would those fall under this, or would that fall under special meeting, or wanted to start gauging what priorities might exist in the community, how our decision might go?
It's one of the major reasons we're doing this tonight.
Okay.
So if there are other suggestions for Dr. Cohn, when would you like those by?
When do you want to start taking the survey?
I think we can turn it around while it's fresh and hopefully have it back to you by Friday.
Well, I can't add things after you're done with it. Of course. And have it be.
Right, so when do you want? By tomorrow?
No, it's when do you want? So how long do you want to give people to give us information? When do you want to start it? When do you want to end it? It's entirely up to you.
I guess maybe I'm not being clear. If we want to add to the list, we need to provide that additional items, if we think of something tonight, after the meeting, to you by tomorrow, so the survey can be ready to push out, that we can get back to you by, complete it by Friday.
Okay, so you have it. You have the link. She's able to change it at any point.
Okay.
So you have to set the timing for yourself. So if you want to give yourselves till tomorrow night to give us additional items,
yes,
then you can take it on Thursday and Friday.
Yes.
That's fine. If
Okay.
that works for you,
Yep.
that's what we'll follow.
Okay.
Right.
Does that work for folks?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
My
Leanna?
question is, are
So-
there the possibility of more items coming from all of us to add to this list?
Yes, that's what he just said.
Yeah.
You have till
So
the
you
end
have
of the
to-
day tomorrow
Yeah.
to.
Okay.
You have till tomorrow night to get them to me.
If you have an epiphany in the middle of the night, Director Lesame, you're a very bright woman, and I know that might happen, so. Yeah. Okay. Do you have what you need?
I will.
Okay. Okay, thank you. We're now at section 10.02, the legislative priorities. The purpose is to develop a legislative platform for the 2017 legislative session, and this will be Mr. Moore and Director Mitchell.
Happy New Year. Nobody had a chance to tell you that yet, so thought I'd start off with that. So we've all been a part of or many of you have been a part of the WASTA Legislative Annual Conference, and you know that oftentimes WASTA doesn't have the materials available till just before, and I think they became available the Thursday before the Labor Day weekend, and Director Mitchell joined Dana Riley-Black and myself, and we came up with a quick structure to get out and provide you guys some feedback. We have the same objectives and board goals from last year. Your legislative advocacy throughout the year is key. So tonight, I just wanted to provide some information briefly and talk a little bit about the process. this particular diagram, if you were to go to the Supreme Court website, there's a lot of information. They have keyed in all the different the dates that have occurred throughout McCleary. And it's important for our public to know that this has been going a real long time. In fact, the lawsuit was filed in 2007, so we're approaching on a decade of waiting to see, a better outcome for students in our state. On August 12th, 2015, last year, as you know, the Supreme Court issued an order, and I always like to emphasize, and as if you read the Times article recently, the particular line that's highlighted in that paragraph, and it really talks about the consistent underfunding of the actual cost of recruiting and retaining competitive teachers, administrators, and staff. And we're down to the point where they've funded transportation, MSOC, all-day kindergarten, K-3 class size, and they still have more class size funding that they're supposed to address, but this is the elephant in the room. And it is what is deterring this dynamic between labor and management in a statewide sense. So the Supreme Court on September 7th heard from the state. They presented their case that they have done good enough to be pulled out of contempt. The cost for completing the project is estimated to be about $3.5 billion. The Supreme Court back in August of the prior year had held them in contempt and charged them $100,000 a year, which we all know is nominal, and that to date it equates to $39.1 million. So if you think about the $3.5 billion shortfall, they have a little bit of money going in our direction. Ultimately, we heard from the plaintiff, we heard from the superintendent of public instruction, Randy Dorn. There were some counter briefs, and now we await what the Supreme Court will decide to do, and we all speculate. So not a lot to report on the outcome. There's plenty of information there. In fact, I had all of the briefs attached, and when I met this morning with Dr. Cohn and with Director Mitchell, we removed a lot of that information. So the WASDA annual conference, if you've been a part of it, districts collectively submit their ideas and requests in May and over June, over the summer. The legislative committee takes a look at them, narrows them down, and they say, put a stamp on there of do pass or do not pass, or sometimes it's do pass as amended. Quickly, they provide that out to you, and at the end of the month, Director Mitchell, as our legislative representative, gets to go to Spokane, and along with 295 other participating districts, vote on which of these 120 proposals are the top 10 collectively. So I think we would all agree it's more of a process of engaging everybody in conversations and going one by one on these proposals and understanding the issues of others throughout the state, more so than it is really formulating the platform, because from those 120 last year, they came down to these top 10 priorities. And of those, I highlighted the ones that overlapped with our legislative priorities. The only thing that's not evident here is overt statements about the levy cliff, because they do talk about levy equalization funding and formulas, but not about the levy cliff, because we know it's focused on us in a certain region with certain levy dynamics. So from those 10 topics, it boiled down to these three, and I believe this is one of the documents you were asked to carry around on the Hill in March that boiled it all down from the 122 learning space for every student, ample and dependable funding, and great teacher in every classroom. Those are very strong statements, but I again urge that I think we have all learned that it's about the process that matters. But I do want to point out that it did not address the levy cliff, and that's something we're doing with the local funding task force. Again, just to remind you, here were our priorities, and that was in the presentation. We will work on that in November for your efforts to represent us individually in the needs of our district in Olympia. So, as I mentioned, we had provided you as I think I already covered a lot of this do pass and do not pass. The legislative committee had gone through, and I think there were 4 do not passes, and the rest were do pass of their recommendations. You as a board have had a chance to look at them, and from that, the 62 standing positions and the complexity of it, I asked, is there any feedback on anybody who disagrees with the legislative committee? Didn't have, I think there was concurrence with those who responded that the standing positions, the pass or do not pass, were in alignment with our beliefs.
Can I interrupt you there?
Sure, because we
Upon
did.
reflection, we had some discussion today.
Right. So with that this morning, Director Mitchell and Dr. Cohn and I met, and we did make some recommendations. I don't know if you'd like to talk about.
There's just one. It's a new proposal that it specifically says WASDA shall support and or initiate legislation that authorizes local school districts to define the minimum standard of a school day until the legislature provides funding for an additional 80 hours of professional development and collaboration time. So they want to propose a local control of that school calendar. And I'm recommending that while we do support professional development, our kids also need to be in their seat the requisite number of days. And so the legislative committee put this up. They're recommending a do pass, and I'm recommending, but we'll go with what you all believe as a do not pass when I have to vote on this, if that's clear. So they would take days out of the student school days in order to provide for professional development. And where we have professional development, probably not all school districts have that same funding.
Right.
Right.
But should we support just kids not being in the classroom? Yeah.
Was that
Thank
there
you.
was no limit on the number of days instruction locally.
Yeah, it would be, they'd seek waivers and but they'd have local control of their number of school days.
I think local control is very vital, and that we need, and I know every school district does not have the funds that we share and do not have the support of the community like we do with our levies passing. But I think it's very important that local control and local involvement on how much professional development as well as seat time our kids get is important, instead of saying, no, we'll do this over and above seat time, or we'll do this over and above professional development. I think it all depends on how the district.
But do you want the districts to be
able
able to take away
No,
student
I want
seat
the
time?
district to be able to control whether we.
That's not what
give-
it's asking, though. It's asking that districts have the control to take away student seat time in lieu of professional development, because the districts aren't being funded for all of that.
It used to be we could submit a waiver for days to be able professional development.
Right.
You go to the state board, you'd say there's 180 days. We'd like to have in this district 178-day school year in order to have 2 days of professional development. That occurred when the state cut the 3 funded lid days. So that they provided some opportunity, and we did some of that. A number of districts did. What I'm reading into this, and what I'm reading into the description, and Jeffrey, if you have information that says otherwise, please say so, is that this item would suggest that the school boards locally could be given the ability to pick their own minimum number of school days or hours per day,
In order for the staff to have the professional development they need.
which would, of course, in this state necessarily end up at the bargaining table.
Well, I'm going to, this is good discussion. I want to allow Jeff to get through the rest of his presentation, because we have some questions that we want to ask and
But
engage.
can I just finish this thought of if I should go with a do not pass or a do pass?
Well, I think we will talk about that in the board discussion.
Okay.
Mr. President, in a way, that is this part 2 of the questions at the end. We're sort of moving it
Wait.
forward, and we're going to settle the pass, do not pass now, and then we can talk about
Okay.
priorities.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it might work better.
I stand corrected. No,
Yeah,
that's
that's
fine.
fine.
That's fine.
Other than that, if
Yeah,
you agree with that
I would
assumption, then I
agree
think
with the do not pass.
Do not pass?
Yes.
And I agree with you that we like local control, but I like the seat time.
I
That was
like
my
the, I
concern.
like the both. You know, I think our district should be able to choose whether one or the other, because we know the necessity of seat time, and we also know what our teachers need as far as professional development. I want the control of being able to choose ourselves. But knowing that we'll fall into the category of we make sure, you know, seat time is there, but we also ensure that our teachers get the professional development that they need. I don't want it to be a one or the other. I want the district to make that determination and then answer to the public why our kids aren't in the school chairs. Why aren't our teachers getting the professional development that they need?
And I think that that's their intent, is that because the state is not currently funding both, that they're saying districts should be able to choose. But I'm not leaning to that seat time, so.
Do you have what you need?
I do, thank you.
Okay. So, again, following and looking at the numerous numbers of priorities and asking individually for you to define your top 10, excuse me, I'm gonna move ahead because I think we've covered most of that material. This is the top 10 proposals from last year. And directors are asked to take a look at these, decide if you still were in alignment with them or if there were other priorities. Based upon the responses, the next slide will show you the 7 of these that remained on top. But I want to talk about the 3 that aren't listed on the next page. The first one is simple majority in bonds for November general elections. It's redundant with item number 7, which we were more in alignment with for all elections. And so I can understand why the November general elections did not stay on and isn't prioritized on the next sheet. The second one is statewide bargaining for salaries and health care. That may be something when you look to the next page you want to include. I think the thought is that by fulfillment of McCleary and taking on the balance of the basic ed's costs, which includes salaries and benefits, that will occur by default. Nevertheless, it may be something you want to overtly state. The 10th item, attract and retain high-quality staff in hard-to-staff schools. While it doesn't represent our interests, it does represent small and rural districts who are asking for some incentive to get staff to come out in remote areas and work. So I can understand why those 3 items are not on this particular sheet. So as you see, the three items I excluded, these are the remaining 7. School construction, full funding of basic education, MSOC funding, professional development, changing school bond approval requirements, special education and special needs students focus, levy equalization and funding formulas, which we know broadly affects our statewide. But again, notice that there is no mention of the levy cliff and holding districts harmless. So the other 5 that came out of this process were increased funding for high poverty schools, the focus on building schools outside the urban growth areas, which is something that is in our future when we build a new elementary school, but it's not present at this moment in time, although it does hamper a little bit the design of a potential high school, but Mike has a solution to that. Kindergartner preparedness, and this particular one submitted by Spokane does directly state hold harmless while the state transition from levy to state funding. So it's calling for holding harmless if you do the levy swap so that we don't get injured during that transition. And then the final one is social, emotional, and behavioral support for students. So I'll turn this over to Director Mitchell, but at this point in time, these were sort of the, 12 items of which the top 10 you might give her direction on voting on.
And that's what I do for Caroline, since you haven't been there. Out of the 89 or 69 or whatever that they have, they give us a piece of paper and they say, rate your top 10. And then they compile all the top 10s, and then that's how they came up with their previous slide, which was the top 10s. So we just discussed, these are probably the 7 we might like to keep from what was the whole WASDA group last year. And then if you want to give me guidance on those 7 and the other 5 for your top 10, so that I can vote based on all of us.
I have a question. Yeah. The hold harmless while state transitions from a levy to state funding. How many districts would be involved with that kind of plea if that, to find out how high would it rank up there? I mean, if there's 2 or 3 districts that would be in that category, would that be very small numbers that the state would overlook us, or would, unless that's a high priority, or?
I don't have the current statistic, and I can get that to you. If I recall, it is over 100 districts, I think is approaching 150, that would have some level of impact. So, for example, we're at 28%. Some of them may be at 25.7. So that it's kind of an array of where people have ended up in terms of the levy capacity.
And also
but it's about a third.
And the WASDA recommendations, if it is a lower number, so it doesn't go as their top 10, it could still be one of our priorities on our handout.
Right.
So I mean, we can still look when we fill out our form, when the people that make the beautiful form, that can still be one of our things if we feel strongly about it. That was a great question. And then the last bullet on there, the social, emotional, and behavioral support for students, I've heard from a couple of people that they think that should be in the top 10. And it's funding around that. It's really a schedule of how many FTEs for different areas, for positions, nurses, social work, psychologists, guidance counselors, and that it's fully funded, so that kids have their social, emotional, all those needs at the schools, and they've broken it down: elementary, middle, and high. So how many we should have.
So just so I understand for process tonight, we are in agreement with the top 7?
That's a question?
That's a question for you.
So yes, on the top 7? Okay.
We're asking for direction.
On 3 more of those 5, or if there was something, not that you all have the same 69 that I have in my hand, but these are the 5 that Carol and I sort of proposed and we looked at, and so just what you all think.
How impacted are we on the urban growth areas? Mike?
Well, for the new high school, I think that we're going to be fine because the building part of that will be within the urban growth area and the fields will be outside. We may be proposing a small restroom building outside the UGA, but we can, the primary utility that you need to connect to for that kind of a facility is sanitary sewer. So we can do a drain field for the small building. So I guess the bottom line is for the high school, I think that we're going to be okay. The challenge will come primarily when we get into building additional elementary schools or other schools beyond the new elementary 18 and the new high school.
Is that because Public Works won't go out to the outside of the urban growth?
It's a yes, that's part of it. Is the Growth Management Act prevents, well, requires that facilities needed for urban growth be provided within the urban growth boundary. So when you go outside of that boundary area to provide essential facilities for the growth that's happening within the boundaries, you start to defeat the purpose of the Growth Management Act. So the part of the State Growth Management Act is that the utility providers in many cases are prohibited from serving facilities outside the UGA that should be inside the UGA. And that's how they control that. So school districts are interested in not having to comply with that because we end up having to build facilities that serve students inside and outside the UGA.
And Bethel and Spokane districts both proposed this, and one of their rationale is the property within the UGA actually costs more than outside the UGA is one of their statements, and so then the cost of of buying the land for the building costs more.
The concern I have too is there space within the urban growth area large enough to house a school currently in our district that we could purchase, that's
There's the key.
available and we could purchase.
There you go, and that is affordable. There is, as you know, quite a bit of land within the UGA. It's just that ultimately the undeveloped land of the appropriate size is going away, is being all developed. So in our district, we're not sure if we're going to be able to find any school-sized properties within the UGA that are affordable and not already developed. It's unlikely that we will. So we'll be looking outside the UGA as our last resort.
And per this, there's only about 27 districts that are impacted.
Are there any questions on the other recommended 2016 additions?
What is kindergarten preparedness? I was looking for the language on that one specifically. I couldn't find it.
If you have it as regular calendar number 3, but I don't, it's not. WASDA shall initiate and or support policies or legislation that provide resources for kindergarten preparedness, especially for children in poverty in whom English is not their primary language. And they just give evidence of why they need that, because public early childhood education programs allow closer alignment with the public K-12 system, providing a more seamless transition to kindergarten. So I think it's early learning.
Is that high preschool?
Could be.
Could be.
Could be.
It's not clear here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could be.
We have 2 minutes left. So are there any of these that?
Minutes and 12 seconds.
In 12 seconds. Are there any of these that you don't see as a priority? That might be easier than which is a priority.
Well, wait, we have to pick 3, right?
You have to pick 3.
We have to pick 3?
Or 2 that aren't.
Okay.
My vote's for the social, emotional, and behavioral support of students.
To keep or to not keep?
To keep. I would
To
like
keep. Choose 3 to keep. Is
Yes.
that your question?
Yes. So if you each give me 1 to keep, we'll see if that gives us 3.
I guess I would, maybe bottom of my list is the schools outside urban growth areas, because we're not currently impacted by that in the next several years, although it always takes so much time. But when I look at things like funding for high poverty schools, which we could put to use tomorrow, it's a tough one though, because you don't want to push it too far down the road, and then when we really need it, it's going to take.
And it's one of their standing positions, so not making it one of our top 10 doesn't move it off of any standing WASDA thing. So
For me, I would, the two that I would not focus as heavily on would be the building schools outside the urban growth areas, because we're not impacted immediately right now on that. And also socio-emotional behavioral support for students, because we currently do, the other ones are a little higher on my list.
Okay.
My 2 focus areas that I would advocate for are certainly the hold harmless. That seems to be pretty significant. And increased funding for high poverty schools. I think that kind of is a catch-all for some of the other things that we're talking about.
That works. Thank you.
I did have a question though. Is it appropriate to arm Director Mitchell? We have a lawsuit against the Everett Public Schools and a number of other districts by Superintendent Dorn, that we asked WASDA to take a position to support those districts that are named in the suit as far as arguing for a stay in that. is that appropriate?
For me to go to,
I think it's, actually, I don't have an answer for that other than saying their typical process that I outlined would suggest that we do that in the spring, that it becomes a priority. I haven't been to the conference. Is there a point in the conference where they say, do we have any additional positions that folks would like to add?
I think there are.
and there might be
Okay.
time, there might be time at the conference too for the districts that are impacted for us, the Friday, to maybe have a little special meeting.
Yeah.
Of the districts that are impacted with the WASDA leadership and and see what we could do. That doesn't have to be at the big General Assembly, but it could be a dinner talk or a late afternoon.
Well, I seem to recall when I was the legislative rep, there was, and I can't remember what the item was, but it was very topical at that time, and it was should WASDA, outside its legislative priorities, have a statement of support on a given area.
Undocumented students is a
Was it?
very, very hot topic.
Yeah, and I think it was brought up before the body, and they made a statement of support. And, you know, is that helpful for you when you go there?
I think we should consider another one, too.
You probably have 2 or 3.
Yes, but I think that there's still time. The conference isn't until the 2 weekends from now. So if there is anything else I can take with me, I sure would.
Did you want to offer your?
Well, we were talking earlier today, and in fact, Jeff and I had several conversations, and so have several of you with me about our ability to fund early learning. And at this point, school districts have an operating levy, they have a capital levy, and they have a transportation levy, capital bonds as well, right? And we don't know what's going to happen, frankly, with the operating levy. I think probably we ought to be raising the issue at this point in time, given the sad state of affairs of funding for early learning in this state, and something that's outside basic ed. We should make the point that if the state wants to empower school districts to move forward in funding early learning, that they ought to create a separate levy type that school districts across the state could use to get their communities on board to specifically fund an area outside of basic education, but one that's critical to the function of the basic education program, and that's pre-K programs. And let WASDA work out how it wants to frame it or restrict it. But I mean, I see, you know, the potential for several years of wrangling around levy swaps and how do you fund McCleary and getting the whole job done. If past performance is any indication of future behavior, and maybe what we ought to be saying is, gee whiz, give us some more tools to get a job done that needs to be done across the state, especially in areas of high poverty. So I think we should put it out into that particular court of public opinion and let folks wrestle with it a bit. I just toss it out there for your thoughtful consideration.
Thank you, Dr. Cohn. This is actually a great discussion. I appreciate your leadership in this area, Director Mitchell, and it's an interesting time. It's always an interesting time, but this is it's about to get more interesting. So thank you. Thank you for that time. We're now at section 10.03, board meeting agenda conduct, and we want to spend a little bit of time here to talk about our board meeting agenda practices. Based on discussion during our board summer planning workshop this year, we did not make any adjustments to the regular board meeting agenda format. But we wanted to kind of step back and reflect on some key areas, and they're loaded in your documents as far as, are the public comment segments introductions needed if there are no requests for comments? Are the agenda highlights remarks for the superintendent report still necessary when we know what the agenda is going forward? Can the board superintendent comments and the meeting evaluation subsections be blended without losing the importance of either? And is the purpose of the board superintendent comments subsection defined clearly enough to focus effectively director's preparation of comments for best use of time? And so I think we wanted to spend a little bit of time. Dr. Cohn, was there anything you wanted to add, or?
I'm happy to give you some background on each of that item if you want to, but if.
Sure. No, I think
Oh, well, okay, so, and I'm not arguing for them. This is just information in terms of history. And,
Can I just say a comment before you go into the details? Sure. In that we had a conversation around the structure of our meetings and how sometimes the structure actually adds length to meetings because of Robert's rules and introductions and things. And I requested that we look at ways to help streamline some of the processes as they were to add, keep the focus of the meetings on the presentations and things that to me are most important and less on the logistics of the formality of the process. So with that.
And without getting into details, I think there are probably some remnant strains of PTSD operating in our structure and procedure and process as well. So first one is public comment segments. When we changed the nature of the public comment sections, there was a feeling that we should go into some detail about the importance and the structure and the purpose, et cetera, et cetera. And we've begun doing that whether there's anybody here or not. So that was what gave rise to this one. The highlights, as I recall, the genesis was around telling people in the audience, potentially people who are viewing, the highlights, the important items that the board had decided to work on. People who may or may not listen to the rest of the agenda, or people sitting in the audience who may not stick around, but they were here for essentially the public comment section, or in this case now the first public comment section, and board members felt that we should have, for those folks who are here in the audience, none here tonight, Brian's not a member of the general public, and neither is Sergeant Tim. The picture of the full agenda, because they weren't going to stick around after the comments. I mean, that was part of that conversation. You recall we had a fairly robust meeting evaluation structure. We did a little combination last year. It now feels like a bit of an appendix, not a useful thing, and probably could be blended if not done away with, which are a couple of the options. And then the fourth item, the board superintendent comments had to be very, very carefully shepherded by the board president for some time, and now part of the question is whether or not we have agreement on why we still have that, what it's for, and so that board members have some common sense of what that particular slot is in the agenda is for. Whether you want to be more clear about, here's what we put in there. So that was kind of some of the history. Those used to go on for a very long time, from what I'm told. And in some cases, they were not very pleasant experiences. That hasn't been the case for 3 years or so. So that's the history that I recall.
I kind of like for the wherever the camera is, that viewing public with the public comment statement, but I think that the question you have, this is a time for public comment, is there any public comment? And if he says no, it could end there. If there is yes, then you could go on.
Yes.
But I think that way we are transparent whether or not there is public comment, and people who are viewing don't think we've skipped that section.
Over. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So but we make it 4 words instead of a paragraph, and is there. Does that help?
Well, usually what we do is we state that we're now in public comment sections, and we value your, and then we ask the superintendent, are there any requests for public comments?
Yeah.
And he'll say no, yes, whatever, and then we skip on.
Yeah, we say 2 sentences. The school board specifically sets aside 2 times during the regular board meetings to hear from our constituents. We do this because we value public input and want to hear and understand the perspectives you bring to the table. And then I will ask the question, Dr. Cohn, are there any comments? If not, then we move right along. But I think to frame it is important.
It's important.
And especially for those people who may be listening in, I think it's really important to say, no, this is an important statement. It's one of our values, I think, that we do care about what people have to say, and we invite you. Now, if we have, have to, we don't go into the, as far as the protocols, yeah.
The timing, yeah, unless somebody's up there and wants to speak and there are several people, then we tell them, you have, 3 minutes to talk or 5 minutes to talk or whatever. I think it's important, I would agree with President Wenta.
Well, and I think it is. It's to introduce it and to, so that we don't skip it if there isn't any.
Right.
Yes, that was not the intent.
The agenda highlights remarks in the superintendent's report, are those necessary?
Well, I wonder if there isn't an audience, if the slide could be skipped, but if there is an audience, then the slide is kept?
That's
Or
kind
is
of
that
hard to
confusing?
do. There's
Are you
no
looking at me?
slides
Yeah.
for agenda highlights, though. He does his, you mean like his superintendent's report? That's separate than agenda highlights.
No.
No, it's the agenda highlights are embedded in the superintendent's report.
So we go through the agenda. We introduce the agenda at
Yeah.
every board meeting, and then typically what's happened is Dr. Combe goes through
His superintendent report.
he goes back through it, and we were trying to decide if that was maybe redundant.
Oh, I got
So
you.
it is it is verbalized. You're right. At the very beginning, we
Summary,
adopt it,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And then it's a,
No, we do not verbalize at the beginning of the meeting the agenda content. I only tell you whether or not there are any changes,
oh, okay.
right?
That's-
So,
yeah.
so
Oh,
this was
okay.
the part of the superintendent's report that was designed to tell people who were here, what the, sort of the highlights, the fullness, if you will, to some degree of the board's work was this evening, because they were only sticking around for their
For their
piece enough
part.
to do it right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so recognitions and public comments.
I'd rather
happen
not
before
put them
that.
together if we're not going to use them, because they take staff time. So we can cut it out. It's
I would
entirely
say
up to
cut
you.
it out because most of the time our visitors know what's on the agenda because they're watching for something and then they come and they're not coming to list, they don't. I think most of the time they come because they've looked at the agenda beforehand.
I would,
Got it?
yeah, and my concern is, I think at the end of the day, we're going to shave 10 minutes when we look at all these. And that we can be consumed with efficiency, and I'm certainly guilty of that. We can be consumed with efficiency and expediency, and we lose the fullness in the context of what we're trying to do. And so I actually have thought about this, and the agenda highlights for me, yeah, it does speak to kind of the bigger picture. And for those who are sitting in the audience or looking or reviewing the slide presentation, it says, yeah, these are the things that we find to be of value and to hold up. And to minimize that for the sake of efficiency, I struggle with. I can go either way, but I think context and sharing the fullness of what we're doing is important.
I would agree with President Wenta.
I would disagree, respectfully.
Yep. Okay.
I think that the occasions that we do have people in the audience are extremely rare at that point in the meeting, and that the folks that review the meeting have the agenda right next to them. So it's all, when you go online to look at the video, you can see the agenda, you can see, so that information's provided later to them if they're viewing the film or the video later, not film, digital.
Or the slide deck.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't understand the purpose of the combining the superintendent comments and the evaluation, because that takes no time. And not sure what changes to our comments are needed.
Well, it was interesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Cohn. We talked about the board superintendent comments as an opportunity for us to discuss our individual connections or activities with schools, which is important, and we want to do that, or activities that we're involved with through the district that have spoken to us. sometimes, more than others, it's really an opportunity to provide appreciation for great staff work, and I don't think we want to take that away, but sometimes it devolves to that level, and we don't, and the intent is to also share, oh, Pam visited Monroe, and this is what happened, or Tracy was at the Penny Creek PTA meeting. So kind of keeping that front and center as well. So was that a fair characterization? Yeah.
And that's about what we do, isn't it?
It is. You know why this came up is because I think, at least when I joined the board, there has been no guidance in terms of what would be beneficial for us to share. So my question, it was really more of a question is, you know, what do people want to hear from the directors? And, you know, if we're all giving, you know, there's five thank yous on one presentation, is that necessary? Because I hope these people here know how much we appreciate them. I think that it's important to give thanks. But, you know, it was just around a question of what should that time look like and what is valuable to share.
I think it's a good opportunity for us to share what we've done in the district as far as school visits, parent or teacher engagement, or other events in which we present the district to that community organization. That's what I look at as a good opportunity. Plus also comments as far as what we hear in the briefing. And I understand we can all say thank you, thank you, thank you, and it does take up a lot of time. But I think what we should maybe do is realize that that does take up a lot of time, and we can all be appreciative but not have to say it, you know. And then we don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
You know, you don't really have to say anything if you choose not to. If you haven't visited any schools or you didn't find, you know, you agree with what was previously said, you don't have to say anything. And then you can move it along. But I think everybody feels compelled to say something, and they really don't have to. And I think maybe what we should do is just realize you don't have to say anything if you don't really want to.
I've been to so many places, I always have
Draw a picture and then hold it up and say.
Yeah, you wouldn't even know what that was.
Does this get?
But I think you could probably, if we combined it, the agenda, is that the other question? So that it was 15.01 and 15.02 became the same thing?
Correct.
So you don't have to say 15.01, board superintendent comments and meeting function 15, and then go on to self-evaluate. It could just be, here's the time for self-reflection and evaluation.
We're not eliminating anything. We're just tightening up the logistics of the.
You don't want to lose the self-evaluation criterion that's embedded in there.
Correct.
So I'll just drop that into the 15.1 and we won't worry about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We used to fill out an evaluation sheet.
Yes,
I mean, it
I
used to
remember.
take time to do that and fill out an evaluation sheet.
Yep. Okay, so I know what to do with that one. That's an easy one. So we'll combine those and we'll carry those throughout the meetings for the rest of the year. Board Superintendent comments. I'm not hearing any revision to the statement of purpose that's carried in 15.1, which is fairly general.
Right.
So we leave that alone. Okay. I'm hearing sort of a 3-to-1 opinion set on agenda highlights stay in the superintendent's report.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing. Okay. And I'm hearing public comment segment introduction is just the little 2-sentence job, doesn't need to be done on the second public comment item because we've already done it. And if there's anybody here, you give the larger piece, right? Yeah.
I think that's fine because we offer the one time. So you're saying that even though we offer the second time, if there's nobody here, because we've already offered it the first time, we don't need to re-offer. Yep. I like that.
Yep. I'm good. Do you have what you need?
wasn't my item. It was
Okay.
The question is, do I understand where you are? And I think I do based on my recitation.
Okay.
We good? And I want to make sure those 4 items are captured in the minutes. Do you have any questions? Mean evaluation gets blended into board superintendent comments, and there's no change to the description that's included within 15.1 now. But director conversation, I think, has sharpened that focus a bit, adequately so.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. We're now at section 11.0, the second time slot in our agenda for public comments. There are no requests for public comments, so we will move to section 12.0, unfinished business. We have no unfinished business for this evening. Section 13.0, new business. We have no new business for this evening. Section 14.0, upcoming agenda items. Dr. Cohn, what are our upcoming agenda items?
Item 14.1 is a special meeting. It's scheduled for September 20 on your calendar. It is a student performance and EES trend analysis and discussion that's presented by Greg Lobdell, president of the Center for Education Effectiveness. It's an annual workshop that we've done for you for a while, a study session that's significantly in-depth with respect to an external perspective of the performance of the district and a high-level review of the what we call climate for change data. Okay.
And regretfully, I will not be in attendance. I have a conference that will take me out of town, so
I won't be
Vice
there either.
President Mason will do a great job presiding.
So just 3 of us?
Right. Item 14.2 is your next regular meeting. At that meeting, Catherine Matthews does her approach to the annual student achievement report, and she carefully coordinates with Greg so that they don't overlap, or the way they address it is substantively different. And Catherine probably has, it's one of those that we don't hold to the 20 minutes. Catherine probably has 30 to 35 minutes of analysis, and it used to be we took an hour for this. We've cut it back to substantially, and then there's a separate slide deck, probably 180 slides, that you'll be able to peruse that she will not go through. That has a lot more in-depth data than you can surely ask about those once we finish with her portion of it. But that's with the second administration of the Smarter Balance assessments and the changes in the state assessments and the sort of the fallback that's occurred with respect to the progress on performance gaps by poverty, ethnicity, and some of the federal categories. It's a fairly substantive analysis, and it's called out in the goals that we've discussed and you've approved this evening. So those, for me, those are 2 very, very important aspects of your monitoring work that you do. So you'll also have impressed accounts, and in the general operating business, that's an annual activity, as is your cancellation of outstanding warrants. You'll have some contracts that you'll approve, and I believe a bid list. We put the Gertrude Jackson Fund board approval, which you're responsible for, in here. One of the items that's not in here that we had some discussion about today because it popped up in some interesting conversation is a revision to the capital plan that you approved for submission to the county. And it's driven by the fact that that capital plan did not include a couple of items that we've been talking about, but you haven't decided to move forward on, that were, well, one of which we've been talking about, the other of which we really haven't talked to you about, and that is the county appears to have some dollars that can be allocated to some of the maintenance work that needs to be done at the baseball stadium adjacent to this facility, and we think that should be in that plan in order to navigate, I think, the pathway for that activity. So Mike is going to prepare a small revision to it, and we very much plan and want to move forward with a couple of the turf replacement activities at two of the high schools. And we think that it's an awfully good idea, given how that's shaping up, and the possibility that Mill Creek may change its mind about that partnership, putting that partnership on hold for a while, that we ought to have those items in that document to help us navigate the regulatory processes more effectively. So my plan is to bring something back, and frankly, we could be in a position during the next couple of days of responding to the county's request for prioritization of work to be done on that stadium without having any opportunity to talk with you about it. So Mike and I will put something together, either Friday report or pre-Friday report, to let you know where we're heading. And if you see any red flags, you'll pick up the phone and call me, please, because it appears that given some changes in what's happening with respect to budget items within the county, that they're going to switch some resources, and they've asked us to respond because they know this is a priority for the team and therefore for us, and that it's not something we fund in the district. So that's a bit of a heads up on that particular meeting agenda. And since we're not doing my report this evening, we'll have an extra meaty superintendent's report at the next meeting.
I have a question on that statement that you just said. For the county actually pays some of the team cost?
No, I didn't say that. I said the county has some capital dollars that it can move from one purpose to this purpose, because part of the county's role is tourism and economic development. And that facility was built not with, in the way you see it today, not with district funds, but with legislative and local funds. And I don't remember how much was generated by the hotel motel tax, and how much was generated by the Department of Commerce, and how much was generated by economic development funds. That history is somewhat old. But the district's stance in that was, we are happy to be a partner. We only put money into that facility to the extent needed for high school baseball, and dollars that come in from rent, a large portion of which we put back into the maintenance of the facility, so that that community treasure is well maintained and the team is able to function effectively there. So we've made it very clear to the city and the county that the funds, the timing of the original funds, the payback of those funds is coming to a close, and the team is made it clear to us that they need some upgrades and
Aqua
some
Sox.
Aqua Sox.
Not our teams. Yeah.
Not our teams. No, the Aqua Sox. We're talking about the Aqua Sox. Need some upgrades and some maintenance to that facility in order for them to use it to the extent they need to. And the county's responsive immediately. I'm not saying the city's not. I'm just saying today the county all of a sudden is saying, hey, we think we aren't going to be spending some money on some capital projects we thought we were. We know this is a priority. Can you submit for these funds tomorrow or in 2 days? And fundamentally we said, yeah, but we got some work to do.
On it.
Yeah, we got some work to do. We're delighted to be able to do this, but we want to make sure that this is kind of a heads up that we'll do our best, but sometimes these things happen very quickly. So that's 14.2.
Thank you. We're now at section 15.0, the board superintendent board meeting self-evaluation. Student Representative Carrillo, we haven't heard from you in a while, and we're very excited to have you back.
Well, I just want to say that I'm very excited to be back here and at school. It's my senior year, so I'm very excited but terrified at the same time. I wasn't here at the district, but I did volunteer at Hawthorne again this year in the summer school. So if you go to Hawthorne and you talk to some second graders or third graders, I am known as teacher or Miss Amy.
There you go.
Yeah, it's just really fun. I hope to be there once again this year, hopefully, and with the same teacher as well. And then football has started again, and as a football manager, I have to be in all of them. I have to say I'm really excited for it. Just last Friday was our first home game. It was just so exciting to be on the field. So if anyone ever goes, you will see me running out to the field with a cart full of water and trying to hydrate everyone.
Did you want to mention the score of the game last Friday?
Sure. We won.
Or which team won?
Everett won 28-0 against Cascade. Although I do have to say, I was giving them water and one of them accidentally spit on me. So I walk from the field to the sideline and I'm just soaking in spit of one of the players because he drank water. And as I went to pick up his water bottle, he turned around and just spit the water out, but it all fell on me. So I had to get watered down so I wouldn't be sticky from
hazards of the job.
Yeah, but I am very excited for it, and I just really love doing this. So.
Well, I personally really like the cheerleaders at Cascade with their big bows in their hair. My niece is a cheer coach and hopes to be a high school and college cheer coach someday, and she appreciates the big bows. I went to my first football game at Jackson as a Jackson parent and saw Jackson play a very tough game against a Yakima school, but they won. And two phenomenal pass received, whatever that term is, I'm not a football fan, receiver with really good runs of like 50 and 70 yards. So hopefully that was on tape. And but I just wanted to welcome Druvik. I know that probably a lot of the language we were using is like you were in AP Calculus for the first time, unless you're already there and you're already learning that. But please whisper in Carol's ear or write her a note if you ever have any like immediate questions, because I whisper in her ear, and I've always done that for the students. It's when I can. And welcome back, Amy. And I didn't understand this year why kindergarten started a little bit later. Like Penny Creek had a thing that, kindergarten starts on the 12th. And I said, oh, my daughter would have been so mad had kindergarten not started on the same day if like she didn't get on that bus. But talking to a couple of kindergarten or older parents that kids were kindergarten last year, that the WA Kids was happening and just how valuable that time is. And even though the parents I talked to are teachers, they're not teachers of kindergartners, and they were, as a parent, really got to experience that, and so it really helped me understand that time was very much used for those kindergartners, but how, as this is the first year we're offering full-day kindergarten to every student, that every student's going to be in a better position. So, thank you.
Druvik, we're going to come to you last, so you have the opportunity to formulate some thoughts. I'm not suggesting that you don't have those now, but Director Lassane.
I have no comment.
Director Mason.
I'll take up your time. How's that? No, I just wanted to welcome everyone back. It's the start of a new school year, and it's exciting. And I guess as a parent, I love seeing my kids go off to school and coming home and telling the stories and hearing about the classes and the instructors, and it does just make me very appreciative of this district. There's some really strong instructors out there, and I get to see a handful of them, but I know, and this ties in with our report of professional development, that we're working hard in this district to make sure that we have a lot of really great teachers. And I just so appreciate that as a director and a parent. And special call out to Sally for some of those new hires over at Everett High. Thank you.
Dr. Cohn?
So a couple quick things. A couple of good news items. Lowell Elementary received a $3,400 grant because of its Title I efforts. They've done a tremendous job, and we're very, very pleased and proud of them. The district was identified by District Administration Magazine again as a district of distinction. You may recall that from the previous year, so we're going to post that up on the website again. I'll tell you more about that next time around. We've been invited to go to Washington, D.C. and present to some folks, be part of a meeting with the White House by Equal Opportunity Schools. Because of our work, and actually I said I couldn't go, and they came back and asked again. Jeannie said, well, I can't go, and they came back and asked again, and so we're sending Becky Ball back to Washington, D.C. I think the cabinet secretary, well, I think is the individual who's the, anyway, so it's pretty exciting, and it's in, I think it's next week. So we think that's very nice recognition, as much as none of us are feeling like it's a good idea to travel at the moment. Enrollment is up a bit over last year. I have to tell you once again, I am absolutely totally impressed by the character and quality of the staff that works on the start of school, the expectations, enrollments. We are 20 students off at the moment of a 19,735 student target for the year. So the error at this point is 0.001 in terms of the district hitting the target that with respect to the enrollment. I think that's pretty remarkable. It's again 20 less than projected and budgeted this year. It's 311 more than last year. We've hired 119 certificated staff, EEA members this year, 56 classified, not including coaches. Cascades enrollment is 1755. Everett High School is 1430. Jackson is 2,118 as of yesterday, and those schools are expected to grow by 15 each, except for Jackson, which is expected to grow by 20. 7 of our elementaries are over 600 students in enrollment, and frankly, it's my belief that they don't need half-time assistant principals, that they need full-time assistant principals. Not that we'll be able to handle that this year, but we're certainly looking at the way we can manage it. Penny Creek, Emerson, Silver Lake, Woodside, Cedarwood, Forest View, and Milk Creek. Those are a couple of, I think, worthwhile notes for the start of school. I've got some fun stuff to share with you, and we'll do it next time around when we actually do a superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Cohn. Druvik.
Sure. So first off, I'd like to thank everyone for the warm welcome. I'm really excited for not just this upcoming school year, but also the next school board meeting. Hopefully I'll get to play a more active role next time as I'm getting used to how this whole thing works. And so, yeah.
Very well.
Yeah, thank you. Well, welcome, Druvik. Welcome, Scott. We're excited to have you in this new position within our district. When we were advocating for this out in the community, it was in some ways a concept that we talked about many other districts having, but we believe it's a game changer for our district and especially for students of poverty. And so we're just excited where you can take us in this area. So welcome aboard. We're excited. That is all. We're now at section 17.0. This concludes, or excuse me, 16.0. We have no executive session scheduled for this evening. 17.0. This concludes the business scheduled to come before the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors on September 13th, 2016. We are adjourned. 4 minutes over.